All right, I'd like to call this August 10th meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge and reunification. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sal?
Father God, thank you once again for entrusting us with your town. I ask that you give us your wisdom and discernment to make the best decision for our citizens this evening. And may we honor you in all we say. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Sal. All right. Oh, awesome.
Commissioner McMullen. Commissioner Pollan.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Vice Mayor Satterfield.
Present.
Mayor Stark. We have a quorum.
All right. So the first thing we have on the agenda is West Orange Healthy Selfie Day proclamation, which I will read. And then I know that Lisa's brought us t-shirts and she's going to get a picture of us in our t-shirts. Okay, so the proclamation is, whereas Healthy West Orange inspires healthy behaviors and provides resources to help residents make a better lifestyle choices. And whereas Healthy West Orange champions healthy programs that deliver health and wellness activities. And whereas Healthy West Orange unites health-minded organizations for whom a healthy community provides meaningful benefits. And whereas Healthy West Orange advocates for healthy community decisions and encourages local leaders to keep their communities' health and wellness top priority. Whereas Healthy West Orange declares the third Friday in September as the annual West Orange Healthy Selfie Day. Therefore, it's my great pleasure and privilege as mayor of the town of Oakland to declare Friday, September 17th as West Orange Healthy Selfie Day. So do we want to get a picture with,
Just hold up your first if you want, but then we can stand up and get like a holding stand or we can sit. Basically, what matters to me is that I get everybody in the photo. I may have to go a little bit and take it
we can have someone take the photo. Oh, it's a selfie.
It's a selfie. So
Oh, yeah.
let's do both.
We just can't tell anybody if they take.
Exactly. Let's see here. Can we get like you guys on that side with them? And that way I'll be on this side and I can turn it. And we can, everybody can hold up your shirts.
And the proclamation.
And the proclamation. Will you sit on that side? There, we got it all now. Yes. And then you all should be wearing these and taking your healthy selfies and supporting us. We're doing an Apple Watch as well as 2 YMCA members.
Did you bring any extra?
I will bring more because we've got extras. If you have other folks for us to give them to, absolutely.
Okay, I have a few people.
Yay, we will drop them by. Okay, here we go. And healthy selfies. Oh, it looks so good. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, no worries. It's fuzzy. I moved my hand. We gotta do it once more. See, I thought I was a pro, but the
Oh,
man.
Lisa, too bad.
Best smile.
There we go. There, that's the deal.
Got it?
That's it.
That's-
Thank you so much.
So much.
You know, we appreciate.
So now we have.
Well, I'm thinking, there's a local group. And if you see Ward before you see me, ask him, but I think like maybe 10 because Gina can get one.
Absolutely.
But he goes, I haven't been back since I got back
I'm
from.
not gonna be here the next meeting.
I can go.
I have you on the main thing.
So we are colorful. We have orange, we have purple, now we have gray.
I like this gray one.
Yeah, I like.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much.
So I like the purple one.
Mike, did you work at a clothing store or something? Got that nice and folded up.
Yeah, right.
Disney costumes, man.
Was that the Emporium?
Ooh,
All right, okay, we have Mike here with us from afar. He's gonna talk to us about our audit. Yes.
All right. No, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and he's gonna give us a very brief, since we understand reserves so well now.
Right.
A very.
Well, you
brief-
know, it's
Oh,
funny,
my.
when I was getting ready for tonight, I was laughing at the exact same presentation I use every year. And I didn't want you to think I'm not a creative guy, because I am. But like you said, if I use the same tool every year, you know, we get a good understanding of what we're looking at every year. So I will be brief. I was actually able to be there tonight, but I thought since we have this opportunity to do a virtual meeting, and I can kind of take control of the screen and go through the presentation, it might be a little more effective and go through it a little quicker than just me reading through it. So for the record, I'm Mike Brynjolfsson, Brynjolfsson CPAs, your external auditor since 2009. And I'm here tonight to go over the results of our audit for the year ended September 30, 2020. Now, this document here, everyone has a copy of this. This is the audited financial statements. This is what our audit opinion covers, and the reports I'm going to talk about are all found in this document here. I'm not going to go over this document because it would take all night. I would love to, but I won't. What I did is I prepared a handout. It's just a few pages, and it kind of hits the high points. I'm going to go over our reports and then give you some financial numbers of the how the town's looking and some caveats to those numbers, and so you get a feel for where you're at, because you really do need to look at it at this high level, because the town is in such a dynamic zone with the finances right now. When I come into audit, it could, the numbers could swing by millions of dollars from one year to the next. It's just really a wild ride when you're doing the audit, because the numbers are large. And I'll show you that as we go through this. But I have a process to filter through all the noise and kind of get down to the four most important numbers in the financial statements. So if I can get
Should be able to,
control, I
right?
can. Oh,
You
I
should
should.
be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try this.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, can you see it? Okay. Almost every time I try to do that, I get it wrong. So let me get this going, and I can just go right through this, and hopefully everyone can see it. Does that look okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Got it.
Okay, great. Well, if we go to page 2 of this handout, it's going to be the summary of our 5 reports. And when you engage an auditor to do an audit, that's really what you're looking for. This is our deliverable product. You do get a lot of pages of financial statements, but that's what we audit. That's not the results of our audit. The results are on these pages, and this is a summary. Each one of these is at least 2 pages, and it's pretty wordy, but of course I encourage you to read it because there's a lot of good information in there. But in a summary form, the first report is on page 1 and 2 of the financial statements. And this is going to be the report on the financial statements. This is a report required by the AICPA, and every non-public entity, non-publicly traded entity in the United States gets a report that looks just like this. And in this report, we express an opinion on the financial statements, which is we're giving you opinion as to the fair presentation. This is kind of like the audit report on the numbers. This is the main audit report. That's why it's always page 1 and 2. And what we give you here is what's called an unmodified audit opinion. And that's the highest level of assurance that we can give you. We can give you a lot of different opinions: an adverse opinion, a disclaimer of opinion, a modified opinion, but you've got the best you can get, which is often called a clean audit opinion. And what we're saying in an audit opinion such as this is that the pages that follow page 1 and 2 are free of any significant errors. Based on our testing, we give you a pretty high level of assurance that it's free of any significant errors. Now, we can't give you absolute assurance because we're human. And even if we looked at 100% of your transactions of the town, human error could creep into our work, and we could never give you absolute assurance, but it's a high level of assurance that the numbers are free of any significant errors and presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. A clean opinion does not say you're in a good financial condition, and it doesn't say you're in a bad financial condition. What it says is what follow these pages is a fair representation of what actually took place during the year. And then you can go and make your decision. That means you can rely on the financial statements. That's important, no matter what type of a organization you're involved in, even outside of the governance of the town. You know, if it's a homeowners association or a church, it's always good to know what this page 1 and 2 means when you read it. Then you'll go through the financial statements once you go through this book. And then we get a series of reports that begin on page 47 and 48. This is our report on internal control and compliance. This is a report that's required by federal government auditing standards. And I've had people ask me, why are we being audited under federal guidelines? And I say, because the Auditor General says you will be audited under these. And that's how it works. The state requires we audit you under government auditing standards. And the goal of this report is to report to you any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls or any significant non-compliance. So you can see in the first bullet point here, we do have one material weakness in internal control that we identified, but that's 2 in the prior year. So one of those, the town has actually eliminated one of the very original weaknesses in internal control we identified in 2009, and I'm very happy about that. It's good to see that go off the books. And I'm going to talk about these in a little more detail when I get to the end of the presentation. And then there's one significant deficiency, and there were 2 of those in the prior year. So we went from 4 identified weaknesses in internal control to 2. So that's great. You know, in 2009, there was 16, I think, of deficiencies. And so we're getting really close to that 0 number. You can see the second bullet point here, no non-compliance to report. So that's good. Following this report is a compliance report that's on a very specific section of the Florida statutes. You can see it here. It's 218.415. And this is a 1-page report. And people have asked me, why are you auditing compliance with that section? And the answer is the usual, right? The Auditor General says we will. And they say we're going to go to this section and look at how the town invests their public funds. And, you know, at this point, there are no real investments at the town, but we still have to take a look at where the surplus funds are being held. And they're being held in qualified public depositories as allowed by Florida statutes. And so the result is no non-compliance with this section. So as we move forward, if you ever do want to make some investment decisions, I encourage the town management to reach out to me and let's talk about it before they do. So we don't run into any non-compliance in this area at the end of the year. On page 50 and 51 is a management letter. Again, why do we have a management letter? That's because of the Auditor General. They say you'll have the management letter. And read through that management letter. It's 2 pages. It gives us an avenue to report to you a lot of different things about the town, whether you're in a deteriorating financial condition, whether you've met financial emergency conditions. It allows us to report to you non-compliance is not material. It might be a small non-compliance that we don't typically report in this government auditing standards report. Internal control recommendations that are not significant. Recommendations to improve financial management. They really give us a lot of options here to report things to you. And we have 2 compliance findings and recommendations to report here. Now, these are not material. It even says, if you read through that management letter, these are items that are less than material, but these are items that the Auditor General looks for. These are findings derived directly from the financial statement. So these are some items that we have to report in that management letter, and we'll talk about that at the end as well. You have finally, you have a loose report that's in the back of the audited report. And this is your governance letter. And this gives us an avenue to report to you non-number related items, such as if we're having disagreements with management or we're having difficulty getting the audit done, items such as that. It also allows us, or actually requires us, to disclose any audit adjustments that we made that are deemed material. So there are some material audit adjustments in there. Go take a look at that. I mean, it's never fun unless you're an accountant to go read journal entries, but they're in there because it's required. So that's the summary of the audit results. All in all, Very good. You know, even in this growth spurt here, that the town management is still tackling these deficiencies and getting them off the books. So that's the result of the audit. And I want to go over a few numbers just to give you an idea. You know, it's a clean audit opinion. Now I want to give you kind of my opinion on the financial, the numbers. And so to do that, let's move forward to slide 4 here. And this is just a graphical representation of the town. And it's got 2 types of activities, governmental activities and business type activities. And the accounting standards require we break the town up into these 2 halves. And we actually have to break it down a little more. We have to break governmental activities down into these separate funds here. You have your general fund, your impact fee fund, and the charter school itself is a fund. And then over here, we have our water and sewer fund. And I did not modify this because now it's the water, sewer, and refuse fund. On 10/1, the town moved, and I know you know this, but it'll be reflected in the financials that the refuse segment has been moved over to the enterprise fund with the water and sewer segments. So what I like to do is I just want to look at the general fund because the charter school fund has its own audit. We're working on that now. I present the results of that audit to you specifically. So we just kind of exclude that from this analysis. And the impact fee fund just merely holds your impact fees. There's some big numbers in here, but it's nothing really complicated. It's just impact fees go in and they're held until they're spent, when they're moved to the applicable fund where they're spent from, and then they're spent from those funds. So I'm just going to focus on the enterprise fund and the general fund. So here on page 5, like I said, I'm not creative with this. It's the same thing we look at every year. And as you remember, what I'm always looking at, and as the mayor mentioned, I'm always looking at that reserve number, because look at some of these numbers here in 2020 and 2019. And what this is your balance sheet for the general fund at September 30, 2020. It's a snapshot of your assets and liabilities at the end of business on that day. And here's what I'm talking about. You know, when we did the audit in 2019, you had 2.6 million in unrestricted cash. We come in this year and there's over 5 million. It went up $2.3 million in 1 year. It's drastic. And you can see the changes over here on the right. So when I talk about dynamic, you can see what I'm talking about. So this is your total assets, $6.9 million in your general fund, up 1.5 million from last year. And I'll tell you the main driver of this, because you may wonder, where's that 2.3 million coming from? We probably didn't make that much of a revenue over our expenses in the general fund. And that's true. This cash, restricted cash and cash equivalents includes those escrow accounts where the developers will pay you for their own escrows or for Orange County public school impact fees, and you'll hold them until you need to remit them to the school district. And so that's kind of what caused this big increase. There was an apartment came in and paid impact fees and permit fees there at the end of the year, and it really caused a year-end spike in the unrestricted cash. But anyway, it's part of this component. As I say, if you look at any of these line items, it's hard to get a read on where you're at, because this did go up, right? Your cash did go up, but so did your liability due from other governments. Down here in this section are your liabilities. So your assets are 6.9 million, but your liabilities are 5 million. So the best way to look at this is to cut the noise. We look at your net worth of your general fund. We take your assets minus your liabilities, because if you had $10 million but owed $10 million, you would really have zero net worth. So we do that math and we come up with this number right here. This is kind of your total reserves in your general fund, 1.8 million. That's really not the way to look at it, because some of that is restricted. You have $1.5 million that's set aside that are earmarked for debt service. And that has to be set aside. And then you have some non-spendable, meaning you've already spent it. So what you do is we take your assets minus your liabilities and then figure out what portion of that 1.8 million can we use going forward into the next fiscal year. And that's this number right here, $220,000. That's going to be your unrestricted reserves in your general fund. Now, is that good or bad? That's always the question. And you don't really know. right? Just looking at a dollar figure, because I always use Tampa as my example. They go through $1 million a day in their general fund. So this might get you through 10 o'clock in one day. You know, it might get you 2 or 3 hours in Tampa if it was Tampa's general fund. So what we do is we compare your reserves to the level of expenditures for that year. So here's your level of reserves, right? Here's your expenditures in your general fund, 7.9 million, and we do the math. We divide one into the other and we come up with this 2.77%. And here was the number in the last year, 10%. So this is the generally accepted measure of financial condition of your general fund is going to be this percentage. There's the Government Finance Officers Association is the best practices setting body for governments, and they set a minimum here of 15%, basically 2 months. They want the town to have 2 months worth of your expenses in your unrestricted reserves at the end of the year as a minimum, not really as a target. You know, the target should be somewhere around 20 or 25, but as a minimum 15%. And as you can see, we're below the minimum here. I'm going to go to the next page and show you this number trended over time, because that's important. And I'm going to show you a couple of these graphs. And what I do is here's that number. There's that 2.77% right here. And that's that blue dot. And come over here and here's that 10.3%. That's this dot. And so the solid blue line is the town of Oakland. The red line are going to be peers. They're going to be sister cities that are similar to the town in taxable property value and population. It consists of a total of 17 local governments. And this is their average. This is not saying this is right or wrong or a target or too high or too low. This is just what other local governments of similar size as the town are at. So, you know, and you can see it's been low for a while. You know, during these years back here, the general fund was assisting the enterprise fund in getting that sewer segment up and running. And those were that's why here sometimes it was below zero. Last year there was a bump up, and then this year it went down to 2.7%. So the takeaway from this is, as I say every year, we want to kind of focus on getting back to up to that 15%. I do want to give you a couple of caveats. There are some grant funds that came in shortly after the end of the year that aren't included in this. That's what the dotted line is. So when you take those grant funds into account, it goes up to 4%. There's also other things such as, your $1 million grant that you receive towards your art and history museum. Half of that was yet to be received at the end of the year. So that's another $500,000 that's expected to be received. I mean, it may have been received yet this year. I don't know. It wasn't when we were wrapping up the audit in June, but I mean, that would increase this to around 10%. So you see, it looks worse than it really is. It is kind of where I'm getting at there. But anyway, the goal here, and we'll talk about this every year, is we're gonna want to push up towards about 15%. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. If you do have a question, just interrupt me. So as we move forward to the next page, whereas the balance sheet's a snapshot, this is actually looking at your revenues and looking at your expenditures for a period of time, not just a snapshot. This is what happened from 10/1/2019 to 9/30/2020, with 2019 here for comparative purposes. And it's kind of where the balance sheet's a picture. This is like a movie. And here you have your total revenue, 6.2 million. Really close to last year. It's down $91,000 or around 1%. So revenue overall was relatively flat. You may have some questions about these changes over here. I mean, this other, nobody likes a caption called other, but there are sometimes that things are just a miscellaneous group of activity. And the reason this went down $750,000 is in 2019, the town did receive half of that $1 million, and also the donation from United Arts. So that's the difference. That's what caused other to go down, because you may wonder, wow, that went down a lot. What happened there? We have other increases here, your taxes. Of course, as you put rooftops up, all of your taxes are going to go up. Licenses and permits, the main driver of this is going to be your construction. It's funny that actual single family residential construction declined by 55 homes in 2020 compared to 2019, yet your impact fees and your building permits went up mainly because of that apartment building is what caused that to happen. But anyway, you get the small components of the different line items of revenues, but overall it was relatively flat. We come down here to your expenditures and it's by functional category. One thing you can see is your physical environment, which was your refuse segment. That's gone now. That's at a zero because it's in the enterprise fund. And you can see the rest of these line items, with the biggest one being capital outlay. That was really significant this year. There was a lot going on. Of course, the Art and History Museum was the largest. It had expenditures of $1.1 million during the year, which compared to the expenditures on it 2019, it was an increase just in that one project of $850,000 year over year. So you can see capital outlay went up significantly, and that was why. The individual components are, like I say, there's a lot of noise in here. And so the way we pull that noise out is we take your revenue and we subtract your expenditures, and we get this number here, $1.6 million to the negative. And then we divide that by your revenue and we come up with this, a negative 27%. So what that means is for every dollar of revenue that came in the general fund, you had to go somewhere else for 27 cents to fund your expenditures. And you know where you went to get those expenditures. You tapped the bond proceeds from 2019. The town issued bonds in 2019. Not all of them were spent in 2019. They carried over into 2020. Bond proceeds aren't revenue. So it doesn't show up in the revenue numbers. So it makes you look really bad, right? It makes you look like, oh, wow, we're at a $1.7 million loss, let's say, but that was funded by the carry forward of the bond proceeds. So to take a look at this number, like I say, everything in orange is always the most important number. This is the one we're tracking, and we're going to track it on this graph here as well. And there's that number, negative 27%. And here you are in 2019, 1%. You can see the swings that are taking place here. There's some pretty big swings, and most of the reason that you are, or the town is ever below zero, because if you're below the zero line right here, that means your expenditures are greater than your revenue. The reason that you're ever below it for the most part is because of capital outlay, because you're doing capital improvements, investments in the town. And to reflect that on the presentation, I drew this dotted green line, which is the same indicator. It's revenues minus expenditures, and then that divided by the revenues. How much do we have left over after we make our expenditures? Once you take capital outlay out of the mix, you're at a positive 2%. Meaning, let's set that capital outlay to the side, because if we had to, we can turn that off. For every dollar revenue that came in the front door, we had 2 cents to carry forward to the next year to add to reserves, to build those reserves from 3% to 15%. So I think that's positive. These years here were going to be because of the sewer segment. These were the years when the general fund was subsidizing the enterprise fund to get that project started over there. And you can see it now. Once you take capital outlay, you're well in the positive. So I don't look at the reserves as a negative. And I don't look at this as a negative. I look at this as a positive, as you're making those investments in the town's infrastructure and equipment. If we don't have any questions there, we'll move on to the enterprise fund. We're going to look at the exact same numbers, so we don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it. This is your balance sheet at 9/30/2020. Remember, this is the picture. Total assets of a little under $12 million. Liabilities of 3.3 million for a difference of 8.6. Now we do the same thing here. We say part of that equity is tied up in your sewer plant and your water plant and your land and your vehicles. And then you've got some debt on those assets as well. So we pull that out. That's a $7.2 million number. At 8.6, we set that aside because that is not liquid. That's our capital asset infrastructure. And a small portion is set aside for debt service. So what you have left over, just like in the general fund, your unrestricted reserves in your enterprise fund. And you can see that I'm sorry. That is 1.385 million, which look at this, that's a doubling year over year. That's incredible. But again, how do we know is that's good or bad, right? Again, we have to take a look at the level of activity in that fund, and we do that at the bottom. We compare your reserves to your revenue. And your revenue was $2 million in your enterprise fund, and you have $1.3 million in unrestricted reserves. That's a 69% number. Remember, this is the same calculation as the general fund where you had a 2.7. This is a 69%. You can run for 8 months and a week. The way to look at it is if your water, your sewer, and your refuse customers decided to stop paying you on 10/1, how long could you operate at the same level of service? That's key. And you can operate for over 8 months. That's a very strong financial position, up from 5 months in the prior year. And as I look at this, I don't look at it as a one-time shot is the reason this is doing so well. I really think that structurally the enterprise fund is set to be in good condition, able to run its own affairs, unlike when the sewer segment was getting online. And, you can consider making a transfer once, the enterprise fund has funded everything it needs to fund, then it can start making transfers to the general fund. Because remember that picture I showed you at the beginning? I'm going to just go roll back. We have to split it in half. Over here, we have the non-cash flow positive items, and over here we have the positive cash flow items. And the way you equalize it too is an interfund transfer from one to the other.
So it can run 9 months. We can run 9 months and then
8 months.
8 months on a week, close to 9, right?
8.22.
8 months on a week.
Yeah,
8.22.
that's right. Now I'm going to show you that on a graph. We'll look at that on the next page. There's your 68%. There's your 8.2 months. Here's your 5.2 last year. And you can kind of see the history over the last 6 years for the town of Oakland. And here's your 17 sister cities right here at 48%. Now, with this number, there is no rule of thumb as what is too low or what is too high. I mean, I think we can agree that below 0 is probably too low. But as far as where a good rule of thumb is, it just really depends on the capital needs of the enterprise fund. Now, the state is really pushing, and they may have started pushing the town to make these asset management plans, which are good. They're almost like a homeowners association with their schedule of major repairs and replacements. You have to go out there and look at all of the equipment of the enterprise fund and see how much more life it has left, and how are we going to replace it? How are we going to fund that replacement? And doing that process, you can figure out what your reserves need to look like. But I think we can all agree that 8 months is a pretty strong financial condition in the enterprise fund. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
If we go here to page 11 of the handout, we're just going to take a look at the operations of the enterprise fund. And I went back today and I looked at the 2009 financials. And this number right here, this is going to be your revenue. Row 1 is going to be your revenue. The enterprise fund billed for the first time ever over $2 million in 2020. And in 2009, now granted, back then it was just the water segment, but it billed $440,000. That's it. So it is almost quadrupled since 2009. That's amazing. So, we have your operating revenue and operating expense. And you can see over here, they both kind of increased by the same amount. You had a 17% increase in your number of accounts from 2019 to 2020. And then the gallons per account went up about 4%. So they were using more per account, which really accounts for the 27% increase. And to see your expenses increase in lockstep with it is not unusual. So really, while your revenue went up significant, your expenses went up with it. And really the bottom line is about the same. In 2020, the operating income for the enterprise fund was $467,000, down $3,000 from last year. But again, it's got a dollar sign in front of it. So we have to make this relative to the level of activity so we can compare it to your sister cities and yourself over time. So what we do is we take your revenue number and we divide it by this blue number, blue gray number. So we take this number, divide it into this number, and we derive this percentage at the bottom. It's an operating profit margin. If you run your own business, you'll know that a lot of for-profit companies look at this as an operating indicator. And what this 23% means is for every $1 you bill your customers, you have 23 cents left over after you run the operation. Now that 23 cents can go to pay principal and interest on debt. It can make capital expansions. It could make a transfer, to another fund within the town. So that's pretty positive. That's, almost a quarter for every dollar you get to carry forward for non-operating uses. And you can see that trend here at the bottom. Here's your 23%, 29%, 18%. So you can really see the increase in the last 3 years. As a auditor, this makes me happy because this here was pretty rough. These years we're talking the negative 43% means for every dollar you bill your customer, you're having to go somewhere else for 43 cents just to fund operating expenses. So it wasn't operating as it should. A lot of the drag in these years here were going to be that sewer segment, which was really startup costs that weren't capital and they weren't generating revenue, but they were costs in this fund. And so the dotted green line is going to be just the water activity. And I stopped tracking it separately here in 2019 when the sewer fund became its own thing and it became billing revenues and generating profit. So you can see the effect. This difference between the two is going to be the sewer activity. But this looks great. Yes, I'm sorry.
The operating margin, 23.1%. Are we benefiting a lot from what I would call non-recurring revenues like impact fees and the revenue and licensing and all that we're generating because of all the building that's going on right now?
That is a great question. And the answer is no. This is before any of that. You see, what we're doing is this top section up here is the operating activity. And like they say, it doesn't have any of that in there. The impact fees that come in are a non-operating item. And, transfers from, let's say, the impact fee fund are non-operating, the principal and interest on debt are non-operating. They're all down here in the bottom. So no, this is just the operations of the enterprise fund, right? So you can look at that as something that will recur, 23 cents on every dollar. Let's say tomorrow building stops. This should still maintain the same trend. So that's very positive. It's kind of a structural indicator of the activity. Now, on the flip side here, this is important to look at because we can compare it to your sister cities, which are actually really low. I'm really surprised that those 17 sister municipalities, they're all at around zero. I'll tell you that it's important to look at in the enterprise fund is it is expected to generate a positive cash flow. This is an economic profit. It contains a depreciation expense, which can get large and is a non-cash outflow. So what I do is I do a cash flow analysis. I want to show you here because I think this is pretty interesting as well. Let's take out any non-cash items that relate to operations, right? And that's what we get on this blue line. Let's take a look here in 2020. The enterprise fund, after it runs operations, collects all the money from its customers at $2 million and pays its employees and pays for materials and supplies. It had a positive cash flows from operations of $742,000, right? And the two important things that come out of that operating cash flow is debt service, and it's an interfund transfer if one is made. Now, here's your debt service level down here. It's $117,000. You can see that's not a burdensome claim on your operating cash, the $117,000, and you don't make a transfer as of now to the general fund. So the $625,000 is what you have left over after you run operations and after you make your debt service payments. So that's very strong position. And you can see it each year. You know, 2 years ago it was 400,000. Last year was 562. This year's 625. So that's a very positive indicator. You know, see these years back here when it was below. The important thing about this green bar is if it's below zero, that you will run out of money eventually. And so, as I said, these were the years that it had some assistance from its own reserves and it had some assistance from the general fund. But anyway, you can see the positive. You can just draw a line from this negative number here up to there, and that's positive trends, positive trends. The enterprise fund looks great. That's the end for the financial indicators. We looked at 4 numbers, and I probably took longer than I should have to do that, but those are just some important items to look at. I wanted to talk about the findings really quick. Here are the findings from last year, these topics. 10-01 was the original finding for utility billing reconciliations. The town has reduced this from a material weakness in the past to a significant deficiency last year, and that's gone and off the books now. I do really think that the town moving to a new utility billing system, believe it or not, helped this finding. Before, the utility billing system was integrated with all the other components of the software, general ledger, accounts payable, cash collections, and then now they're separate, yet somehow that makes it easier to reconcile them. So however it works out, I'm glad to see that one fall off the books. In this 17-001 is in the last couple of years, we talked about new construction and developer related transactions. You can go back to that 2017, 18, and 19 financial statements, and you can kind of read those findings. That has really been tightened up. There is a lot of chaos generated, a lot of transactions that don't normally recur when you have a lot of this building that takes off like it did in the town. And that's fine. The town has tackled it. They've really straightened this up. And so that was a material weakness. That's the highest level of severity. You can see the levels of severity here at the bottom, whereas a material weakness is the worst thing you can have. And a inconsequential item is the best when it comes to findings. That's something we could just communicate verbally to management. So these are the levels of severity. And so there's a material weakness that came off the books. That's great. Now there's only 2 remaining. And there's this internal control over financial reporting. It's a material weakness. And this is really just drives back to the journal entries that we have to make as auditors. Once you make so many journal entries of such a significance, it becomes a internal control deficiency, because internal control over financial reporting are those processes and policies and double checks, those internal controls over the accuracy of financial reporting. And when the auditors have to make a lot of audit adjustments, at some point it becomes a deficiency in internal control. So I do think moving to the new accounting system is going to help this greatly, because the old one was very difficult to use. It was really hard to go in and find where problems were at. And so I really think it's going to help a lot to eliminate 10-05, but that's a reoccurring item. And 10-06 has to do with restricted cash monitoring. And this really falls back to, there's a couple of accounts that have to be maintained separately. Customer deposits are one of them, and some of the debt service accounts need to be, there's sinking fund requirements. They're required to put certain money in every month. And then when you make the payment, to pull the money out and then start over again, building it up. And so that just needs to be tightened up. And I did prepare a video for management. They kind of went over this, and I know, speaking to Renee, she got what I was talking about this time. I guess it was easier watching the video to understand what we were looking at for corrective action and what the compliance criteria was. So you can go back to the audited financial statements, the black book with the black cover, and you can go back to the back and you can see some detail on that on page 52 and 53. Now, the 2 new ones are down here at the bottom. As I said, these are not material. These are just small items that the Auditor General really focuses on. And that's one, the capital asset inventory. Florida Administrative Code requires municipalities to go out and take a look at their tangible personal property that they have, their capital assets, and do an inventory every year. That makes sense, right? Let's just make sure it's still there. And is anything new shown up, that that we didn't have before, make sure it's on our capital asset listing. And that's important. All of that feeds into the audit as well, because we track that and we have to audit that. And we have that as a recommendation here to go out and do an inventory at or near the end of the fiscal year. And the second one there, the 2020-002, has to do with budgetary control. Now, this is rather nitpicky, but if you were to go to the financial statements and you were to go back on page 43 of the financials, you have a budget to actual comparison schedule in there. That's required by generally accepted accounting principles. If that wasn't in there, we couldn't give you that clean opinion. You know, that's one of the requirements to be presented in conformity with GAAP. And if you were to go to Florida statutes and you were to read through the Florida statutes on municipal budgeting, it says that the town will not expend other than pursuant to budgeted appropriations. So if you went to that budgetary comparison schedule and you were to look at the expenditure section alone, it was $2.4 million over expended, right? And that's just because at the end of the year, situations had changed from the original estimated budget to the end of the year. And it requires really a budget amendment. The town has 60 days from year end to amend its budget, kind of like a housekeeping budget. The goal being is that at the end of the fiscal year, management needs to get the books as accurate as possible around early November, because you have till the 29th to make a budget amendment. You have 60 days, and then make a budget amendment to kind of true up your actual activity to your the original budget. Now, what I'm thinking is when I see it, I say $2.4 million. How could the $2.4 million be over expended? Well, the statutes, when it talks about over expenditure, it doesn't even look at your revenue. You know, so what I did is I looked at your revenue. I said, how did the town fund this over expenditure? Well, the general fund received $1.5 million more than it originally budgeted. So there's one source of those funds right there. You received more funds and more funds were spent. And then also you had those unspent bond proceeds for the Art and History Museum that were received in 2019, used in 2020. And as I said before, that doesn't show up as a revenue. That was $900,000. So when I take a look at your extra revenue you received in 2020, plus those bond proceeds, you actually had $2.5 million of greater than budgeted resources coming into the general fund. And you only spent 2.4 million over your budgeted expenditure. So that's where those funds came from. If you're wondering, did Mike just say we overspent by 2.5 million? How's that possible? Well, you received more revenue than you planned. And you also had bond proceeds that came into this year from last. So that's kind of the way that works. But the requirement is to look at the expenditure level. So the recommendation when you read that finding is to make a budget amendment at the end of the year to actually reflect what took place during the year. Because at the beginning of the year, you know, your budget's just a wild guess. And it gets closer and closer to accurate the closer you get to year end, you know, and once you're 60 days past the year end, you have a pretty good idea of what your actual numbers look like. With that,
The initials MFC stand for.
yeah, I'm sorry, that should say MLC, not MFC. And the MLC is down here at the bottom of management letter comment.
Yeah, I see.
That's what it
the
should say.
MFC down here.
No, MFC. Now, what's MFC?
That's MLC.
The MLs.
Typo.
Oh, it's supposed to be MLC. Okay.
I was looking for it in the legend on the bottom. I couldn't find it.
No, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it's an MLC. I'll make sure to make that change. But anyway, I had in the past a chart that went back for years and shown the improvements that the town has made in eliminating some of these deficiencies. And I think they're doing a really good job. And I really think the software is going to help a lot. The one thing is, you know, findings and recommendations are a part of getting an audit. You know, that's going to happen as we go through, and just eliminating those material weaknesses is really important as we go forward. One thing I did want to talk about on that note real quick, and I'll wrap up here and take any questions you may have. But first, I did want to talk about the fact there wasn't a single audit this year. Now, a single audit is a special grant compliance audit. that takes place when the town expends more than $750,000 of federal or state funds. That didn't take place this year, but I did want to mention going into 2021 and 2022 about the American Rescue Plan Act funds for pretty much every entity that any local government is going to have a single audit. Even some of my smallest municipalities are getting millions of dollars in these funds, and that's federal funds. And there's certain requirements that have to be implemented when you're expending federal funds to that level. There's administrative requirements, there's written policies that need to be in place required by this thing called the Uniform Guidance. It's the federal guidelines on spending their grant money. And so I just wanted to say that because as those funds are received and spent, that will probably trigger a federal single audit. And I would just like to encourage management to reach out to me and we can talk about that ahead of time, because we want to get these policies in place before the funds are spent, because then we have to come in and audit it. And we're speaking about findings. And a lot of times that will generate an audit compliance finding. And that's the kind of stuff we want to stay away from. But that's a report you didn't have this year. But that being said, I talked too long already, and I'll stop and take any questions you may have.
Anybody counting? Did he say city?
He did.
I did not.
Not,
I think.
I have on my.
You have finally done it.
he has a clean audit on that one.
Yeah, you got, did you hear that?
Thank you. Yeah, I did.
Hard sometimes with a mask on. Okay, so at the table, do we have any questions or comments?
Just that we've come a long ways. Wow. 2014 here, record to 2020. Very good. Very happy.
Very nice job.
Yeah, I would like to thank management though, real quick before I go. I would like to thank them because, we had to get the audit done in a hurry. And again, they have the infrastructure there at the town set up to allow us to remote in and get access to documentation, get access to the accounting system. Finance department, city clerk, public works, we reach out to charter school, we go to all of them and everyone's very responsive. Everyone gives us good documentation back in a timely manner. And I want to thank them for that because we could not have got it done. We got it done in the middle of June. Deadline is June 30th. And it's because of that timely response to our questions. So thank you.
Tell me this, why were we in a rush on this?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the reasons is it was because of work compression for us, really. With the COVID, COVID shutdowns and disruptions affected everyone earlier than auditors. It really, because we're at the end of the process, and everything got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back into 2021. And it's a concept of work compression that we had going on. So really, I delayed it by probably about 4 weeks because we could not get clear and get on the job and get it completed. So I'm glad that is behind us.
Yeah, let's hope that, we don't have an occurrence of that again. I'm so pleased, that staff is so responsive to you. And as well, they should be, but they are a small staff.
Oh, no, I agree.
And we would expect nothing less, but we're always, proud of the professional way they conduct themselves.
Yes.
Everybody.
The size staff we have, impressive. I got a question around the size of the staff, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
To Steve, will Mike Parker have enough help to, do the capital asset inventory?
Yeah, we've already got that between the audit and between our risk management. We've got and it can't just be him. We need to have somebody else.
Right.
So we're working through that to figure out how we can make that work with.
That's a We used to do that at Disney. You get a list of capital tags every year, and you have to match them up to your equipment.
Pepsi's the same way.
Oh, my goodness. Oh. And it's like,
That's possible, but yeah, we'll.
where's that buffalo chopper?
At any rate, Mike, we appreciate everything.
Yes. And staff is, we can't say enough.
And we'll continue to work on the findings that we did have. We've got things in place, talking about the capital asset inventory and the budget controls and then the previous.
And
We'll continue to work on those.
implementing new software is so very hard. I don't think that's lost on anybody, including myself, who sat there and looked up water accounts for, a few hours just to see what it was like. And it's, implementing, it takes a couple of months, if not more, to, get it down. So, we appreciate it.
We're still working through some of the bugs with the new system, but we'll get there.
And we definitely need to make sure that, we don't want to get in trouble with the rescue funds, that's for sure too.
No.
Right.
and We're working through this, we're gonna, what I proposed was using those rescue funds on 3 distinct projects that I think we can track. And we'll certainly work with Mike on that as we go through. We're gonna have some kind of an agreement that we're gonna need to do with the state. That'll probably outline some of what we need to do. The League of Cities, they've been great as far as providing that.
That'll be a great resource.
So we'll definitely use all those resources as we move forward with those funds.
And Joseph has a good question about how are we gonna, staff this.
No, we had a project we were trying to work on with resiliency, and I mean, it was too overwhelming for Mike to be able to keep up with it. So this kind of flows right into us trying to get prepared on so many different levels and, knowing
Yeah, and when we think about it, we think about, or I think about, right-sized staff, amount of work that needs to be done. But at the end of the day, you don't want too many people left over when some of that work goes away. That we don't want either. So it's an art and a balancing.
we're in growth.
Good balance, and we don't want to also overwork any other guys, but you're.
Right, yeah.
When it does slow down, we don't want to have excess.
Too much, then you gotta cut people out,
I think we've got the list together on what we're gonna need to inventory. If we have to do it by team and get everybody involved, we will. Just we'll make sure it gets, I'm trying not to drop everything on Mike.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's always,
Yeah,
there's our large commission salaries that,
of course, yeah.
we would donate if we had to.
Absolutely.
We've done it before. Way back in the day.
Just as a matter of business, we just need to have to accept the audit.
All right, well, first I need to ask if there's anybody virtually, because we only have staff in the room that has any questions about the audit. Okay. I'll bring it back to the table for a motion, please.
I'll make the motion to accept 2020 audit as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions, any comments? All in favor? Aye. Great job. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
You too.
See you, Mike.
See you at the school audit.
Yep, I'm working on it. Yeah, I'll be back before you know it.
All right. Public forum. I don't see anyone on, but if there's anyone here virtually that wishes to speak about something that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand. Oh, Becky's got her hand up. Is Becky got her hand up?
No, I think it's a little.
Oh, it's a little thing. Becky looked like.
That wasn't me.
Honestly, wasn't me. Okay, so consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda we have a question or want to pull out?
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any questions, any comments? All in favor? Aye. All right, town manager report. Mike, or Mike, Steve, I'm sure you have some, I miss Mike, I guess. You may have some things, but I want to hear from Mike Satterfield and old lady Dwyer about how it went today and the challenges you're having with Corona.
Yeah, I was gonna leave that to them to speak to. First thing, all things Turnpike, we got all kinds of stuff going on, so. We had a little bit of discussion at the last meeting about public safety as it relates to the Turnpike and the bridge closing. Chief Bates is my contact now that Laura Lee is part of emergency management. So I spoke with him last week. He's talked with the lieutenant over Station 37. They have done some drive times, checking out, how things would work. He's going to give me a more detailed report that I'll bring to the commission, but they are looking at it. They are paying attention to it. I also put them, Chief Stone and Chief Bates and Chief Pete are all on the list when notifications come out from the Turnpike, the same list that Alicia and I are on, and Mike Parker. So they have been added to that list, so they will get the same information that the rest of us. So when there's changes to anything that's going on, as well as when they announce when the bridge is going to be closed, I expect they're going to give us 30 days notice. I talked to the PIO last week. So they'll send us a 30-day notice and then a 15-day notice, and then the bridge will go out.
Okay, I have a stupid question.
Yes, sir.
Chief Stone.
She's the chief that handles all of the logistics with traffic closings for Orange County Fire Rescue.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. She was also here during our immunization event. Sorry, but
That's okay. I just didn't know.
Chief Stone and Chief Bates work together, and she's in charge of all the road closures. So
Okay,
I added her to the list with Chief Bates, so they will both get the same information
okay.
of what's going on. So I'll have more to report to you, but they are taking it very seriously. They've got all the mutual aid, automatic aid things in place. He's checking on Lake County, the closest fire station in Lake County, to make sure that's part of the matrix that they have as far as response. So we'll be.
And their Winter Garden, of course,
That's
is participating.
yeah. They already have, they work hand in hand with Winter Garden.
Okay,
So that's all in place. So we are making sure that's in place. The other thing, the orange signs are already going up. You'll see some on Oakland Avenue, and there's some on the Turnpike already. They even have a VMS board that says construction starting August 16th.
Mhm.
Now, that's not necessarily here in town, but it's on the Turnpike itself. And I expect they'll be mobilizing equipment and everything, next Monday. So they are definitely moving forward. I also, today was the virtual meeting for the PD&E study for the next project, the widening project from 408 to Highway 50. Very, very interesting. There's 3 alternatives for the town. We have posted it on our Facebook page. So if anybody that wants to look at the alternatives, and then they want comments by the 22nd, I did send them a comment about flyover. I think that's just not going to work here in town. Having a flyover that goes over the current bridge,
mhm,
think about something that's, another 30 or 40 feet above that.
yeah,
I just don't, so I did send something to that I didn't think that was a good idea for the town. And I also implored them to add us to make it the Oakland interchange and not, because everything that they've referred to was the Claremont interchange.
Oh,
So-
thank you for that.
But if y'all want to get on there, you can make comments straight through the website. It's that Turnpike 408 to 50.com. I can send it to you again. I think I've sent it to you once already.
Okay.
But you can get on there and actually make comments right on the page. And that's how I did it this evening. So. And then just a couple last things, Oakland Avenue resurfacing. So they come through and done the shoulder work, some months ago. They are actually, have the VMS boards up today, and they will be here next week to start resurfacing Oakland Avenue.
Wow.
They were trying to get it done before the end of the fiscal year because it's budgeted in this year for Orange County. Again, it's an Orange County project. They will be managing that, but they will be coming through and resurfacing Oakland Avenue from Winter Garden to just before the Turnpike Bridge. And then everything else gets resurfaced after the Turnpike Bridge and the roundabout.
Is that Renzo?
No, this is George. This is another gentleman with Orange County Public Works. Renzo doesn't manage the repaving and resurfacing.
How long is it gonna take?
It should be a couple of weeks. It shouldn't, I don't have the time, but we'll let you know. And Mike's gonna work with Alicia to get the message out tomorrow or the next day, so.
Okay.
We had a Best Foot Forward event on the 17th, or no, July 27th. It was their Best Foot Forward Back to School campaign. Even though we're not an official member yet, they've been working with Oakland PD. They were out there. We got a little bit of press through it, and they gave out 6 citations in one morning. So
Wow.
This is different than one that when they had Angela on the TV.
that's good.
This is the one, okay.
That's what I'm talking about. So they did, I think they did like 8 different intersections across Orange County and Seminole County, and we were one of them. But
It seems like it's, gotcha, but pedestrian safety in Florida, the highest rate of deaths.
yeah.
You got to do everything you can to try and
All right.
bring it down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm in total agreement, and me, I'm avid, and I'm out there, and we're gonna talk a little bit.
You're on a bicycle lane.
We just had a friend in Jacksonville, 79 years old, last week, got hit on the bike and killed, hit and run.
Wow.
I'm, bless you. I'm truly afraid to drive down Plant Street because of the pedestrians. I take a different, parallel path because it just
I
scares the heck out of me.
I resign myself that I'm gonna drive 20 down there or get below the speed limit. I just, I do drive through there on occasion, but I just,
Scares the heck out of me to walk down there too.
I was taking the
I'd say whichever side you're on is.
Yeah.
long lead with my daughter to go visit my nephews to cross over that new crosswalk.
yeah,
And 2 girls were ahead of me and they pressed the button for the signals for it to stop, and a truck was coming. It didn't want to slow down. And the girl goes like out in the, like, stop. And it finally came to a stop when she was out there waving her arms like, could you please stop?
yeah.
And I was right behind them like, what, you guys don't respect that light? There's 2 girls and, family walking across and they're like.
I'm famous for going, it's a crosswalk.
You think they put a ghost car right there? Because I heard a couple of comments about that same intersection.
Yeah, they've had it out close to there. They've had it over by Machete, but I'll talk to Pete about actually having it out there. And that camera project that he's talking about, we're working on that. We're still working on costs and stuff, but it'll be near that intersection as another deterrent.
Okay, that's cool.
So we're definitely gonna work on that to make it as safe as possible. And we're gonna talk a little bit about traffic next week and within the neighborhoods and speed limits. And then the future, I'll have a couple of recommendations on Oakland Avenue that we can talk about for future.
I don't think anyone is going to fight you on lowering speed limits
Oh, no.
anywhere.
It's definitely gonna be part of the long-term strategies on Oakland Avenue. The last thing I have is, so 4 South Tub Street, the White House on the corner. We've got 2 new businesses coming. We got Farm 9's gonna have a floral shop.
Yep.
And Pioneer Coffee.
Prairie House Coffee Company, Prairie House.
Prairie House, sorry, Prairie House. Make sure I get that right. I'm kind of excited about having coffee, with them. But they're doing some renovations over there, and the gentleman that owns the building would like to put a sidewalk along Tub Street, along the building. So we've got some utilities that need to be moved, Spectrum and CenturyLink. And once those get moved, there'll be a 7-foot sidewalk along the edge of his property that he's putting in.
Great.
And it kind of matches up to what we want to do in the
Right.
long term. So
Okay, I was gonna ask you that.
we want to do 8 foot, but because of the utilities and there's a stormwater grate right there, 7 foot's the max that we could get out of that. But it still kind of works with what we're looking to do.
As we go forward, we could go out to right from there.
Yeah, you can taper it out.
Yeah.
Is he bringing the sidewalk all the way to the road? Like,
It's gonna bring it up to the road and then down to where his driveway is. So it'll be along Touch Street. And it'll come to whatever. He's just doing it on his property along Touch Street. So it'll make it a little more walkable.
Okay.
But it's he has to get permission
Good for
from us to do
business.
that, and we're gonna move forward with that.
Good.
I think didn't we lose our taco truck to a permanent home?
I haven't heard.
I think we did, unless they're gonna keep the truck and the permanent home. They moved to this, I read on Facebook, they moved to the Chevron near Gotha.
No, I hadn't heard that.
We have a new food truck that's coming in. She stopped here to ask permission. I don't know what kind, but she's very interested. So Chevron
That's a
is,
nice little, thing going
We
there.
did have something good.
Chevron's actively seeking people. So,
Good. I love that the seafood guy's there.
yeah,
That's
Pardon?
the Chevron or the DD?
it's Chevron because she told me it was Chevron. Yeah, it was the owner.
Speaking of food, I'm hungry. Oh, no.
Besides that,
The concession, anything at all moving?
No, a couple of leads that I had that have fallen through. I've got Ashlyn and Alicia doing some research on some other options, so. I don't have anything to report back on that.
And we might think about probably investing a little bit in the building to make it a little more appetizing to people.
Yeah, well, if we can get somebody that's interested, I've offered up that we would do some of the interior renovations to bring it up to where they need to be.
you wouldn't have to put so much money into
That's
it.
hard right now with what they've got, what we've got in there, so.
So yeah, we're willing to make the investment from the staff level to make that happen. So we're just looking at some other options to see what we can find. That's all I've got. Thank you. Sorry, a lot of turnpike stuff.
School,
Actually, the good news about reporting on the school is there is no real news to report on the school. Everything went very well today. I'm sure, Pam will add into it, but our rocket science went as well as could be as far as getting kids in and out of the school. So there weren't any really major snafus of that. There were no incidents on the whole COVID and mask thing. We're still taking the stand that the parents do need a choice in this matter. And some have sent their letters in saying that they want their kids with no mask. There was no controversy. And Pam is in the process at this point of getting something electronic for all parents over the next couple of days to give their brothers on what they want their children to do, to still give that choice on a mandate, but that you do have to have a letter saying that you want your kids not to wear it. So that's what we're working on, really the same theory and the same principle. It just has to go in reverse because of that mandate. So Pam, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I do want to echo the statement that today did go very well. We thought we were going to have to end our first day on a 30-30, which if those of you are familiar with that, that's when the lightning is close in the area and we have to hold the students for 30 minutes. So we started dismissal process a little bit early. It ended up staying clear for us. So that was good. So yep, we had a great first day. In regards to mask and COVID, so we do have our health precautions in place. We still are operating with what we call cohort movements for recess and dismissal, which are 2 classrooms that we allow for them to interact with each other. We have them spaced out in the cafeteria so that they're close to those. So if we do have to make a decision in regards to quarantine a class, we have the ability to narrow down who they've been impacted by. We probably do have about 7 to 8 students that are out on isolation and or quarantine before the school year started. So Nurse Leah is watching that very closely. I do know that we did have a couple of kids go home today because of parents, like, or indoor, parents that have just learned that they have. So we are, those are called indirect exposures at this particular time. And so we keep pretty close ties. In regards to the mask controversy per se, I think that the biggest thing is navigating the waters of the various decision makers, whether it be Orange County Public Schools and or the Department of Education / Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis, in addition to his executive order that wants parents to have a choice, also put together what he's calling a Hope Scholarship, which is the equivalent of what is known as the McKay Scholarship. This Hope Scholarship allows for public school funds to be taken to be used at private schools if a family or a child is subject to what has been deemed COVID harassment. So basically, if a family or child is being shamed for not taking COVID steps, they can be deemed to be COVID bullying, COVID harassment, and they could petition for the right to take their public funds to go to a private school. So that's definitely a very clear message. The DOE also released a statement about the case to the principals, a case for children not wearing masks that goes on to the real science, what they believe is the real science behind masks, including what have been proven to be respiratory issues according to their data from not wearing clean masks, not wearing they're moist, they're not the right masks, a whole variety of things. So where OACS is staying put is that we are a school of choice and that we are allowing parent choice. But what we have committed to is that the parents, when they came to meet the teacher night, which we had in person, they let us know if the child was going to be, the parents or guardians desired the mask, and that we will support that. We will call them, we will let them know if they're not wearing that, when I will get involved and call them as well. What Vice Mayor Satterfield is referring to is that we're actually going to take it a step further. We are using our new it's called School Docs, which is where we house all of our registration information and parent handbook acknowledgements and so forth. We're going to be pushing out a request for a parent to either make a choice. They're opting in or they're opting out, so that we have the ability to know exactly where they stand, so that we can continue to support the desires of the students. So we had a great first day. We're trying to stay as positive as we can in regards to it. We believe that we can manage this as best as we have in the past. Obviously, things change all the time, so I intend to keep everyone up to date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Not an
Pam.
easy job.
One down, 179 to go.
I know today one of the teachers said to me, she said, "What happened in the summer?" I said, "Summer, you guys stop talking about that." I said, "You have 79 more days of this same exact thing. So get ready for your Groundhog Day. We get in, we dismiss, we have lunch duty, so this is what it is." So yeah, 179 more.
Well, again, Pam, our thanks to your staff and teachers for a seamless day in a very hard time. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, so is that it for manager staff reports? Okay. Sal, you want to start?
Yes, so the Metro Plan or the MAC committee or the team they suspended the full gatherings. So they're gonna go virtual, but they're gonna do a small live quorum of 5 minimum. They wanna do +1. So it's not gonna be the full house that we were used to seeing. So I've added my name to be one of the ones to show up there. And I don't know if they're gonna pick me, but as long as they have the 6, if not, it'll be virtual. And just wanna give that update.
So it's the same, kind of the same rule. You have to have a quorum in person.
Kind of like what we're doing here now.
Yep. Well, thank you for doing that. Glad to hear you enjoyed Spain.
That was pretty interesting, fun. Glad to be back on this time zone.
That takes a while.
Yes.
When did you get back?
Last week.
Okay. Rick,
I'm good.
Joseph?
A couple of things. I won't be Mike Parker, but a couple of things. Tri-County League, we are trying to figure out how we're gonna do our next general meeting. So the next one is September 16th in Ocoee, and then October 14th in Apopka. They're more than likely, they may be virtual, so you'll see the notice coming out at least.
Okay.
Well, I would say, it's not finalized, but I would say more than likely September 16th will be virtual, unless something happens. October 14th is Apopka. If you look at the calendar, that's really the second Thursday, but we moved it up to the 14th because Mayor Nelson really wants to be there. So when we do the one in October, it'll be the second, so it'll be October 14th. So that's a date that's solid, but that still may change to virtual too. Locally, the Orange County legislative delegation, they had their meeting on August 30th. Are you going to it or anyone going to it?
I don't even have it on my calendar.
Yeah, it's August 30th.
Word of it.
I don't,
But it's the Orange County delegation, yeah. It's the Orange County legislative delegation. This is my work computer, so please. Orange County legislative. So it's the Orange County
Okay.
legislative delegation will be held at the Board of County Commission on August 30th, and they always give elected officials and municipalities and government a chance to speak before them. I can't go for the Tri-County. If I do go for the Tri-County, I will do it virtual, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen. But right now, I'm set for August 30 from 9:30 to 9. So that's the Orange County legislative delegation. Of course, we know Florida League of Cities is this week starting Thursday. They're saying masks are recommended, but not mandated. So, but they are going to do some social distancing in the meetings and all of the lunches and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be out there all week long. I'm going out there Wednesday. So that's the Florida League of Cities. So if anything happens out there that I can share when I bring back, I definitely will.
it's awesome.
The National League of Cities City Summit is November 18th through the 20th in Salt Lake City. I can't go for the Tri-County, or if anybody wants to go for us, but there's a virtual option. The Tri-County League of Cities is going to pay for me to be to register for the National League of City Audit, Summit, but I'm going to do it virtual. That's November 18th through the 20th. But of course, if anything comes out of that I can bring home, I definitely will, but I will attend, but again.
I'm sure Salt Lake City's sad about that.
Yeah, I bet they are.
Because, that's an opportunity for you to show your city / town off.
Yeah.
When I went to Charlotte, I was so impressed with that city and what they do there and learned a few things.
Yeah. I remember I went to LA about 2 or 3 years ago. So that was great. And then I went to DC, I think. And matter of fact, I was in DC when
Well,
shut
DC
down.
every year,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, I was in DC when we got shut down. So yeah, so that's the things that's going on. Tri-County, Florida League, National League, and the Orange County delegation.
Awesome.
And that's all I have to share.
Mikey?
We already did the school, so I'm good.
All right.
Oh, one more thing.
Sure.
On the Tri-County League, we may put together a Tri-County, like end of the year celebration, like a barbecue somewhere for all of us. I really would love for all of us to come out, if we can. So they're working on, COVID, but they may do like a barbecue. So even with COVID is still around, if we do like a barbecue, outside type deal, it'll be a little bit, safer, more palatable. They're looking at Lou Gardens. Don't have a date yet, but they're looking at sometime between November and December. End of the year celebration, kind of, bring all of the elected officials and all of Florida cities membership, and that's all of us, that's part of the, all of our cities. And
Yeah, I'll be there if I can.
Yeah, no date yet,
Yeah.
yet, but they're working.
My only concern is things will evolve.
Right.
We're in a rapidly evolving
Yeah.
situation. I think things are going to change again. But I hope not. I mean, I hope things get better, but I'm concerned. I'm personally concerned.
Yeah, so that was it. I apologize.
That's all right. Steve and I went to a meeting of the 4 municipalities of West Orange County with our Orange County Commissioner, District 1. All the town managers were represented. Some of the mayors were there. And it was to discuss if transportation the penny sales tax starts to come up again. How are we going to approach how the money gets divided and things like that? And I think, and Steve can weigh in, that we agreed at a very high level that West Orange County would work together to come up with a collective request for what we would like to see happen. I think most of the people in the room felt like, it's, if you try to do all of Orange County like League of Mayors or Council of Mayors, there are too many differences in the municipalities. It's not differences among the peoples, just differences in the municipalities. Have I?
Yeah. I think our best bet is to work together, the group of 4 in West Orange County. We had a great presentation from Ian Lockwood, and I can't remember the other lady's name, with Tool Design, talking about different ways to approach transportation and not just building superhighways,
And not just throwing roads at it.
not just trying to widen, but to actually look at ways to be, more creative and better serve the areas that you're working on. So it was great presentation. It's the kind of stuff we need to maybe help the county see and maybe include in some of what they're doing.
And help shape our thinking
Yes.
when we go to, make a request. But I don't think there's timing on this just yet.
We don't know timing yet on it. If he's gonna do it at the next general election, Mayor Demings, then things have to start ramping up soon, because in the spring, they have to put all the legislation in place, the ordinances and so on. So in order to get it on the ballot. But, we're doing, I think the town, going back a number of years, are doing the right things, looking at things, looking at connections,
Looking at walkability.
all those kind of things. So I think we're in the right, mode, and we just have to be able to figure out the best way to help with the funding. And, the sales tax could definitely be part of that, so.
Well, I know I'll be vocal with that. I know you and Renee travel a lot, and I know y'all know the difference of transportation in different parts of the country. We're in the deficit here. I mean, I feel like we're on an island out here.
Oh, yeah.
We really need, I want to be as vocal as possible. We need to do something, because
Well, yeah, absolutely.
it's crazy out here, You can't, if you don't have a car, you screwed out this way.
Oh, yeah. You can't even catch a bus.
Yeah, sometimes even the Uber doesn't even come out this way.
Yeah. We went to dinner in Claremont and we almost didn't get home.
Yeah, I mean, So I ran into a buddy at the airport.
And this was pre-corona. There was no mitigating circumstance other than they just don't go.
You talking about Uber?
Yeah,
Yeah, sometimes it's hard.
That was pre-COVID?
pre-COVID.
Sometimes it's hard to get Uber and stuff out here. Sometimes you just can't. I mean, I got caught at home trying to go to the airport. I drove my car and I had a buddy go pick me up.
I had to go, I couldn't get to the airport.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to the airport one morning. Nobody come get me.
Yeah.
And you know, what's interesting is, you know, like you said, you learn things when you travel. Savannah doesn't have taxis.
Yeah, they really, yeah,
You can't get a taxi in Savannah.
they got so much public.
I couldn't sleep. I didn't know that. And I couldn't sleep because we were taking the train. We thought it'd be fun. And the train leaves. I mean, it pulls in and 5 minutes later, it's gone. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get to the train station because you couldn't walk.
Right, you can't walk.
And so you know, if Uber didn't show up, I thought we'd be staying.
But yeah, it has to be a area approach because what they got going on over there in Winter Park and Maitland.
Oh, and Denny.
They got their own headaches, you know, but they are working together though. Those cities, the Winter Parks, the Maitlands, and Edenville, they do work together.
That's good.
You know, they talk about it in the metro plan. So out here, you know, it's never.
Well, Winter Garden is buying into, you know, the thinking out of the box, especially with Dillard. But it's not a collective effort, and I think we need a collective effort.
Yes. West Orange, we need to.
And I'm not convinced, and you might convince me that something like Denning will work, but I look at 1792 and I don't get why we took a parallel road and made it 2 lanes instead of 4.
Well, you know, what Ian's talking about is instead of building, you know, 10 lanes of a highway, you build 5 2-lane roads that can disperse the traffic. And doing things that help keep people in the area, spend their money,
Right.
rather than putting a throughway that just takes them somewhere else. One of the examples he gave us was up in Toronto, right, suburb of Toronto, and some developments that they were doing and some long-term thinking. And they wanted to put a super highway through that would just funnel everybody to Toronto. And they were trying to reposition it so that you still can get to Toronto, but within this development, you're retaining some of that and not funneling all your, you know, economic development to Toronto.
Well, what he's trying to say, and what was trying to say was, don't make it a bedroom community where the only thing you do is sleep here.
Yeah.
Make it so that you don't leave other than to go to work, but you do all your.
The other side of it
business
is
here.
you've got to have places for people to work within that community. You know, but it's some great ideas and some great ideas that need to be put forward to the county and how the county's thinking, because ultimately they're going to control this funding. But it's going to take a lot of different, you know, one of the big things that Deming wants to do is between Sunrail and Lakes. They're going to put a large portion of this money in the links. Well, how is Oakland going to benefit from that? How do we get links as part of our situation down here? You know, what makes sense? You can't just, you can't widen Highway 50 much anymore. They want to do another lane based off of this PD&E study. So
Where are they gonna put it?
But again,
take away.
They're gonna take land?
Yes, they've got it. You can go on and look. They're looking to take land.
That's never a pretty thing.
So, but I don't think that's what needs to happen. We need to look at other opportunities, you know,
Well, we've been talking for years about, we want businesses here in Oakland. So people will do business here in Oakland. Look how hungry, and I don't mean to make a pun, people are for like those food trucks and
Coffee
Shy
shop.
and
They don't have to.
the coffee shop.
Steve can hardly contain himself. I mean,
Anything that you don't have to drive, 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
So,
either way. You want something local.
well, you know, in the Carolinas, their big push right now, from, being up there part-time, is they're fighting Interstate 95 and Interstate 26 because those two interstates take people completely through their states, and they're saying, no, we're not going to renovate. No, we're not going to do anything because we want people coming through our towns. We want exits off of it with roads coming in so people can come into our towns and stuff again. And it's a big controversy in South Carolina right now.
Yeah.
For that exact reason, because people, an exit, if you get on 26, go all the way across the state of South Carolina, they got these great big rest areas that make it much more attractive for travelers than to get off and come into a town and city and go, oh, this is nice. I would like to come back here. The rest areas are phenomenal in South
It's
Carolina.
like Italy, the food on it.
Roads are
Great.
worse condition in South Carolina than North Carolina, though.
What's that?
I thought the road conditions in South Carolina is a lot worse than North Carolina.
Well, that's their point, is instead of doing all this on the interstate, help us maintain and keep our roads going so that people have better roads to come into our towns and cities. That's the whole point.
So it was a great meeting. We definitely have some ideas and.
There's a lot more to come.
On execution, and we'll see what happens.
There's a lot more to come. It was just it was a thought, more think tank. There's not any decisions made. It's just, learning, thinking kind of session.
Anything that says taxes is a dirty word, so we know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but if that, it's kind of like that, if it goes through, we need to be ready.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's a dirty word. Even though ours went, I want to know at the end of the day, I really do want to know if any other municipality in Orange County lowered their ad valorums.
Once we get to the public hearings, I can check on that for you.
Yeah. I really do want to know that. All right. Usually we're in a real scramble to get out of here, but that was good. Food for thought. So thank you. But Joseph,
All hearts and minds are satisfied. Let's adjourn. It is 8:36 PM.